Okay, I would entertain a motion to come out of executive session and reconvene the meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Shanefield,
Second.
second by Commissioner Richards. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. After coming out of executive session, there is no action that needs to be taken, and therefore that is all the business that needs to be conducted today. Following the regular meeting here at 3 o'clock, we will resume our budget workshop. And with no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this budget workshop to order June 20th, 2023. All 5 commissioners are in attendance. There will not be any action taken, being it's a workshop. With that, we are a little bit behind after coming out of our regular meeting. First up today, we've got Treasurer Mark Cowan here to discuss component unit tax revenue. Good afternoon, Mr. Treasurer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm going to try and open this sheet that we worked on here. Okay, as many of you know, we have worked extensively in a work group on the collection of the 12 mills and not distributing mills specifically to the component units. So after some extensive work from our work group, we came up with a couple of options for you. The objective obviously was to only distribute what the budget request was from these component units. That's what we're ideally trying to accomplish. With Senate File 60, there are still past collections of mills that are going to be coming in forever, basically. And so what we've struggled with is trying to deal with the past collection of those mills. And we think we've got a couple of options that will work. This first option that we're showing here, what would happen here in this situation, a component unit would come and ask for $3 million budget request. The first thing that would happen would be each month the treasurer would distribute whatever was in that component unit fund. So as those back taxes come in from ad valorem that we have from 2020 and 2021, they'll be put into a fund in the treasurer's office, tagged for the library or whatever component unit it is, and whatever amount is in that fund that month will be mailed out to them. And whatever that amount is will be deducted from whatever their budget allocation would be. So if they ask for 3 million, we divide it by 12. We take that number minus whatever is in the account. We fill out a voucher. The treasurer's office would fill out a voucher for the remaining difference of that 12 equal payment. Send that over to the clerk's office. The clerk's office would pay out the difference. Okay. So that way we're tracking whatever's coming in and we're balancing that so that they just get exactly the $3 million. Okay. I think this is the best way to probably stick to the statutes. And as Mr. De Leon said yesterday, I love following statutes. It's my favorite thing to do. So it's a little bit more work, but it actually accomplishes what we're trying to accomplish, right? We get exactly what they want. The second option on this would be a little bit more convoluted, but as Bonnie says, this would help her budget better because she thinks believes that a budget is her best guess, right? And so in the first option, we aren't really technically budgeting any money coming in for those past taxes. Okay, we're saying you asked for 3 million, we're going to allocate you 3 million. You're probably not going to get 3 million from the county. You're going to get whatever that 3 million is minus the taxes. Option 2 is Bonnie says, look, we think you're going to get $30,000 in taxes. So she estimates, hey, think we're going to get, you come in, ask for 3 million. Bonnie says, I estimate you're going to get 30,000. We're going to allocate you 2.9 and 7, and then we would distribute the 30,000 or whatever it is that came in more or less. And then each month, those 12 equal payments, no matter what, would come out. They're just $2,970,000 divided by 12 equal payments, no matter what. So at this point, if $40,000 comes in and the treasurer's office delivers 40,000, you now have a $10,000 overage for that component unit that you're going to have to address the next year. Okay, because we're just kind of budgeting and guessing what's going to be receipted. All right. So those are basically the two options that we have for dealing with this situation. What are your thoughts?
So a question on that, because the previous tax collections, go into effect as far as a payment December of 2023. Obviously, there's gonna be some delinquencies and
Yes.
overpayment and all of that. But it seems like if we're having to distribute the mill and reduce the budget allocation every month, that could be an accounting nightmare. So I know there was discussion that took place, where basically they have 11 months of equal payments. So let's say the county receives it in December, and then January's payment would be changed accordingly by that. So you still have both of these, you're still doing 12 equal-ish payments based off an estimate.
So and this is where we have hammered this thing, because their statutory guidance says that the ad valorem taxes shall be distributed monthly. And so we have to distribute whatever comes in monthly. And it's not really an accounting nightmare for us because we know what comes in, right? We're going to get a check from the state and it gets distributed into their account in the accounting software. So we know exactly how much money each one of those component units gets every month. It's already in the account. We just write, and that's what happens now. So if there's $10,000 in that account, we write a $10,000 check. Okay. And so we don't really have to account for anything on that side of things. What the difficult part is, we obviously have to create the voucher to kind of accommodate that 12 equal payments. And that's not too difficult because the treasurer's office is going to know exactly how much money we distributed. Okay.
But you're not receiving them on a monthly basis anymore. I mean, in regards to this past collection, obviously anything moving forward is coming in month to month. That's the big change in this disaster of a 12.5-month payout, 12.5-year payout, excuse me.
Yeah.
Is the complication. But if those are just being due in December, then.
Well, so the
month.
payments begin in December.
Right.
Okay. But they can pay whenever. So they can be billed and they can pay those past ad valorem taxes whenever. Does that make sense? I mean, the billing starts in December, but they can pay that. And so we could be receiving money into those accounts whenever. And when we receive that money, we are required to distribute the next month according to the statute. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does.
Okay.
I just want to reiterate what a
Yes.
complete joke the Senate File 60 is. I mean, it has basically
for that.
solved nothing in regards to this 8% payout over the next 12.5 years. It's a disaster that has just added more work on an accounting basis that should have never been handled that way, from my opinion on that. So now we've changed the fact that we're paying or collecting out on a month-to-month basis, but really that doesn't take an effect for another 12.5 years, because now we still have to back pay all of this that's coming in, but there's going to be delinquencies. So this could continue on forever. And so good luck.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
What a disaster.
No, it is a disaster. And of course, anything that we collect too, and we're collecting obviously past due taxes right now for stuff that's happened in 2015. You know what I mean? So it's always going to be outstanding that there are taxes that were essentially allocated to these component units and given to them in the accounting software that we have to account for. It'll never really go away until after about 12 years, I think. Yeah. So, and
Mr. Chairman, wait until the legislature changes their mind and switches it back.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is probably the cleanest way. Option one is probably the cleanest way to deal with the situation at hand. Bonnie really likes option two. I won't speak for her, but we had a conversation this afternoon. If she'd like to come up and talk about option two, she can. Because that it allows for the budget to be estimated.
So the difference on two options, I'm trying to read that. I can't see that far, but
Here,
I've got the one you gave me, which I
Okay.
believe was option one.
Yeah, can you make a couple of copies of those? Because that's not what I left the meeting with yesterday either. So it's,
Want me to run and print a couple real quick?
we came up with three options and the one we're looking at today was not one we looked at yesterday, so.
Yeah, no.
I explained to the chairman how we're gonna do
Yep,
this,
yeah.
and then he showed me the flow chart, and that's not what we're doing.
And I completely apologize for that. Because we had some conversation after that meeting and I spent a couple hours last night reviewing statutes and I think the statutory guidance is pretty clear that that those taxes have to be distributed monthly. So we kind of just have to play in the lane there until we can get some new legislation, which will screw everything up. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Mark, again, which option do you like and which one do you like, Bonnie, with the new options?
I like the one from yesterday, option 2.
Option 2, which was one we didn't really consider.
Well, option 2 was an option yesterday.
Right, but we
We didn't,
narrowed it down to 1 and 3 almost immediately. And
we did.
so,
And of course, you know, we're not really discussing option 3 here today, which we had discussed. Because, and that was the original intent, was that we would just do,
it's just got the 5 things on it. I need one.
you need the other one too?
Yeah,
Okay.
the new option that.
Yeah,
that's the one I don't have.
Yeah, so the other option that we didn't discuss, or that we have discussed extensively, was that we would just, through journal entries, we would remove any funds that came into the component units from their accounts and apply them to what was given in their budget allocation. But that turned out to be a little bit more comprehensive for Bonnie to work with. So I think we've kind of decided that that might not work. So.
Okay, so the difference between the two, if I'm reading it properly here. Rather than doing or adjusting the allocation on a month-to-month basis, we would be estimating that the 30,000 is going to come in. And so the initial allocation that the board would approve would be less that 30,000, and you'd have a true up at next year's budget cycle.
That's correct. Yeah, we just do 12 equal payments and that would be it.
Because I mean, the mill's been set, and so assuming everyone paid as they're supposed to, it should be pretty set and clear, but
Yeah,
that all obviously is not gonna be the case, so.
yeah. I mean, so it has been set, but remember, they have 12 years that they can pay this out at 8%, or they can pay like Converse County did, just pay it off. Converse County's got 75% of their stuff paid. It just, they came in and said, hey, we're done, we're gonna pay it off. So that essentially could happen. And some of these component units would have all of that come in that one fiscal year. Yeah, and then you'd have to adjust for it in their next budget. And the treasurer's office is fine with either option. I think they both work. It's kind of how, you know, the commission wants to deal with the component units. The first option, obviously, they get exactly what they asked for. They don't get any more and they don't get any less. But option 2 could go either direction. So, because if we estimate a certain amount and it actually comes in less, nobody pays, then they could have a shortfall. So.
Yeah, and I worry about that. I just, especially if we are talking about reducing days of cash on hand and things like that, I mean, yeah, they could come back in and ask for more money, but I don't know. I think I like option 1 in that they ask exactly what they need. They're allotted it and move forward. I think it's more transparent to the public as well as to what they're getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that way. You are going to over budget essentially, because they most likely they're going to have something come in, right? So.
Sure, I agree. I like option 1. The whole point of this was to be able to give set distributions to the component agencies, and number one accomplishes that.
I think that's some of the confusion. So that is gonna be the case with the new change.
Mhm.
This is just a matter of dealing with the previously, 2020 and 2021 taxes, which obviously funnels into their allocation, but which adds to the complexity of it. Bonnie, I'm curious on more of the accounting side of it. I'd like to hear both sides, I guess. I think ultimately we want to do what's best regardless of option one, option two, and who's got an opinion on either. We want to make sure that we're being as transparent as possible. We want to make sure that there's no issues with audits and things of that nature, but also, into the future, over this 12 and a half years, we're all probably going to be gone. We could have changes in administration. I mean, who knows? And so I'd like it to be kind of set in stone that it's easy to track and that there's no confusion on what avenue we're choosing moving forward. So I'm curious on the accounting side of your.
Yeah, so I really like that we're going to distribute monthly what comes in, because that's the cleanest, most transparent way to do it for both delinquent taxes and the mineral taxes that are due in the 8%, 12 and a half year installments. So that's very clean, very transparent. I like that we're doing that on both of the options. So I can live with either option. Obviously I have a preference, but I'm okay with both of them. I guess it comes down to the goal of the commission is the goal to give them 12 equal monthly installments. And if that's the goal, I think that option one is the best option. If that's the goal, is to give them 12 equal monthly installments, they get exactly what was requested. And if that's what the board wants, then option one is the best. It will provide for cash carryover because we are budgeting for more than what we're going to collect. I've already estimated how much we're going to collect for each of these component units. And obviously my estimate is going to be based on the mill levies from those 2 years, for that year and a half that was that we're going to be collecting in 8% installments. It's based on what is still outstanding and the 8% based on the mill levies that were given to those component units in those years. So my estimate for that is going to be what is supposed to come in December. Obviously that number is not going to be exactly correct. It's just an estimate. So they could get a little bit more or a little bit less if we do it under option two. So that's the risk. I think it's simple in that you take that, if you look at it in the example, it's $2,970,000. You just divide that by 12, they get that same amount every month. So in my mind, that's the simplest way to do it. I think option two is very clean. Option two, it's a little bit more complicated because then the voucher is a different amount every month and you're not going to expend the whole amount of the budget appropriation, which is fine. It will be a question that the auditors ask, but it can easily be explained and then it will put money into cash carryover. So, but I'm okay with either of them, but it's just the preference of the board if they want for these component units to get the exact amount that the board wants them to get.
Mr. Tillman.
I guess it would make a lot more bookkeeping if you just had them claim it by voucher each month, what they actually spend.
Oh, so you don't want to do the
Well,
12 equal
I'm just putting that
installments.
out there. What if you just had them voucher like you do for some of the outside entities? Some of them you give them a allocation, some of them like the conservation district, they must submit a voucher each month and wait to get the money and pay the bill. But it would make a lot more bookkeeping, so.
Yeah, I mean, as a component unit, obviously they're a wing of the county and we want to ensure that we're taking care of them. I think the bigger concern is just making sure that we're following statute. We're dealing with the disaster that the legislature threw in our lap and that we have a way of tracking it efficiently and correctly so that we're compliant with any auditing. So I think that's the bigger concern. It's just convoluted because we're changing it from essentially approving a budget allocation and then assessing a mill to pay that. Now we're getting rid of that. It's coming out of the general fund and we're just providing an allocation to them directly. But we still have this previous tax collection that we have to distribute per the mills that were set during those periods of time to true it up and clear the books on accounts receivable aspect.
Well, theoretically, they could say you owed that to us, and so that should be in addition to our budget. Just being the devil's advocate.
Well, they can say that, but we have control over
Right.
their total amount of budget and we can reduce whatever allocation we give.
Well, the
them.
cleanest is probably divided by 12, but you know. At
Yeah,
the
that's-
hospital, we
that's a
make them
simple
submit
way.
vouchers, and some of the other ones, we make them submit vouchers.
And there will have to be vouchers to get money out of the general fund. So either way, they're gonna have to voucher. But Mark was saying that under option one, what they're gonna do is the treasurer's office is gonna distribute that amount that comes in the previous month. They're gonna distribute that, and then they're gonna take 1/12 of the budget appropriation amount and subtract out what they're distributing. So they actually do get the same amount every single month. So it does create more work for the treasurer's office in that sense, that they'll have to calculate that, and then
Well,
they
he
were gonna do
started
the
this, so-
voucher. But I'm fine with it. The only problem is if the control in the clerk's office for paying a voucher is gonna be that budget that's set. So if we approve a $3 million budget, and they get $30,000 in this other revenue, if they were to go submit a budget, there's nothing telling the clerk's office, no, I can't pay this, because it alerts them if they're going over budget. But if they've gotten $30,000 through the treasurer's office, so they're really only supposed to get 2,970,000, not the 3 million, then there's nothing if there were to be a voucher that was sent in. But under Mark's example, his office is now doing the voucher, so that should solve that problem. So I'm okay with either way. I think option 2 is simpler, but option 1 gives them that equal payment every month. And it's the full amount of what the commission approves. Option 2 is, I think, is a little cleaner, just to take the total budget appropriation divided by 12. But then you risk giving them a little bit more, or a little bit less than what they actually ask for. So it just depends on what the priority of the
You're gonna do a
commission
budget
is.
amendment potentially either way. I mean, even with
I
option
don't-
one,
You know, we haven't talked about that. I wouldn't do a budget amendment under option 2. They would just get whatever they get from the treasurer's office. I would estimate that. And then they would get the full amount of their budget appropriation. And it could just be more or less depending on how off my estimate was. So I'm not going to do a budget amendment. They could just be short or a little over. In option 2, we haven't discussed the budget amendment. If we're gonna do a budget amendment, we wouldn't have to, because they're not over their budget. We only have to do a budget amendment if they're actually if we're gonna be over our budget, which we're not gonna be over our budget. We're actually gonna be under, because it's not
Okay.
taking into account that revenue that they're gonna get from taxes. So what's gonna happen is everything they collect from taxes, the difference, the amount that they collect from taxes and is distributed is gonna be deducted from actually how much they're paid out from that budget appropriation. So we're gonna have a cash carryover for that amount, unless we do a budget amendment, which there's no need to do a budget amendment because they're not over expending it, but there's nothing that says we can't do a budget amendment.
got it.
It would show up in the carryover the next year.
It would be in the carryover the next year. That's absolutely right. And in option 2, there would be no carryover from it. It's just they get a little bit more, or a little bit less, depending on how off the estimate is. So it's just, do you want them to get the exact amount that you budget for them? Or do you want them to get maybe a little bit more, or a little bit less, but they expend that whole budget appropriation amount? And they're doing an equal voucher every month. So it's just whatever the priority of the board is.
I do like the equalness, as long as there's that communication between the two departments, because obviously, I mean, if the treasurer's office is gonna voucher to the clerk's office, that should solve everything, and it should solve the fact that the clerk's office isn't just paying out, not knowing what's coming in on the treasurer's side, but it
Mhm.
sounds like that's been addressed. So as long as there's that, I think I could lean towards option 1. How's our former county treasurer feeling over there?
Mr. Chairman, I don't like either of the options. I like the option number 1 from yesterday. Mr. De Leon needs to make it legal so that we can abide by the statutes and use that option. You know, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I don't like estimating what those revenues are going to be because I don't think we have any idea. We can have those valuation changes for large amounts. So the lesser of two evils, I would say, would be option one. If the treasurer's office is happy with that, I can certainly live with that. It gets us to the point where we're funding those entities at the level that they are requesting. And that's basically that, and getting through Senate File 60 are the main concerns with respect to this. So that's what that would be my feelings.
I believe Island did as well. Okay, that's
Mr.
the
Chair.
consensus. Go ahead.
One other thing, this does not have to be set in stone. So if we're able to get some legislation that makes it so that we don't have to distribute those mills monthly, we could come back and address this in a much easier fashion. So this could be good for this year. It'll work great for this year. And if next year we have an option to change it, we can still do that. So.
Yeah, because there could be quite a few that decide to pay the whole amount up front, which I don't know if it complicates it more, but
It actually could solve a few things, right? So, yeah. Anyway,
any other discussion on that? Thanks, Mark. Next up is budget decisions. Bonnie dropped off the final copy, which was the same as the preliminary copy. There haven't been any changes made in that regard. Other than she also emailed, I don't want to keep saying true up, but she took into effect in regards to the component units. That email just came through as well. Relative to adding the 3% COLA, handling any over distributions to those component units based off the beloved Senate File 60. And then reducing their days cash on hand to 120 days for those that it applied to. So you have all that before you. I guess, what's easiest for you, Bonnie, just to go through these one by one and advise if we have any.
Yeah, if you want to just turn to page 4, we can just go through each department, see or listen to what you have to say about them. If you're okay with them, we can just move on quickly. If you want to have discussion on each of these, we can certainly have discussion on each of these and let me know what amount you want to budget for them, and I can get that changed. So do you want to start with on page 4, the commissioner's budget? Do you want me to go through them and just say what they are for, I guess we should probably do that just for the record. Are you okay going that
Yeah, I
direction?
think
Okay.
so, if everyone's on the
All
same
right.
page, yeah.
So the request for county commissioners, the total department request for county commissioners is $458,107. That is a decrease of 5.6%, a decreased dollar amount of $21,824.
So in that regard, although we worked really hard to cut our budget this year, we have had a couple situations come up that we discussed in our meeting today relative to some proposals from Wyoming County Commissioners Association for some additional dues. The WCCA has a meeting on Friday, so we'll have more direction there, but the potential would be that we would have some increased expenditures in our dues line item. So I don't know how the board feels, but we could, pending what happens, increase that by paying out those dues over the next 2 years, which would increase that line item by $55,000. And if we don't end up participating in either that loan payoff or the WIR, I guess that would be attributable to the cash carryover. It's that, or we could do a budget amendment pending on what happens, but it seems kind of funny to do right after the budget's set.
I think we should put the extra, I would assume our dues goes under operating. Is that?
Yes, that is
So
correct.
I would say we put the extra 55, and is 55 enough for half and half? It's what, 74,038?
Yeah, so I added up, it was 54,384, so I just figured 55.
So add $55,000 to the commissioner's operating budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Are we all good with that?
And do we,
Yes.
need to put more in. I believe you had asked for it to be put in. Is it already under operating for some money to put some artwork, museum artifacts on our walls?
Yeah, it was. We were close. We had, I can't remember what I told you guys last meeting, but I did have money in there, so we should be okay.
And I think we're good on commissioners.
I agree.
All right, moving on to engineering, the department request for engineering is $542,159. This is a 14.5% increase. Dollar amount increase is $68,631.
No issues here.
I don't think you need that.
Are we all
Pay
okay?
attention.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Facilities custodial, the request is $1,181,872. That's a 5.5% increase, a total dollar increase of $61,548.13.
And just to clarify, this includes the 3%.
Yes, this does include a 3% COLA.
I think I'm good with it.
No issues.
All right. Facilities maintenance, the total budget is $3,570,820. This is a decrease of 44.4%. The dollar amount of the decrease is $2,849,634.
Was that night? Is that the difference there? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Good with it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Facilities, Parks and Rec, the total request is $1,628,081. This is 81.2% increase. The dollar amount of the increase is $729,427.74.
Mr. Chairman, I have problems with my memory going back to our original budget hearing. And with Mr. Legursky here, I would just like to ask him with respect to it. What was the reason for the 33% increase? It was salaries and insurance. Is that what it was?
No, that's in salaries specifically. There's a 33.6% increase.
Okay, I thought it was an extra position, so. Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to verify that with you.
And that is one thing, you know, when we're going through these, some of us have had discussions in regards to the capital projects. The entire amount of capital has been included within these individual departments, so.
That is correct. So if you want, after we go through this, we can go through that, or we can go through that first, however you want to do it. But you are correct. The amounts that are on that sheet are included in these department budgets.
So if we go through these line by line, when we're done and decide what to spend on capital, we just go through and deduct.
I can do that. Yeah. I'll just deduct it from the departments that are decided that will be deducted from that list.
Yeah,
Yes.
'cause we've had some discussions. I mean, there's a lot on this list that obviously the whole thing can't be accomplished. So I think for simplistic terms, we'll just go through these one by one, and then at the end, we can go over the capital list.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. So Parks and Rec, are we okay with that amount?
Yeah.
Okay. Fire marshal, the total request is $287,860. This is a 47.3% decrease. A total dollar amount decrease of $258,173.
Good with it.
Okay. All right, fleet vehicle maintenance, total request of $456,265, an increase of 10.6%, a decrease or an increase amount of $43,608.
Good here.
Okay. All right. General County Admin, the request is $209,690, a 1% increase, a $2,000 increase. Okay. Grants admin, total request, $186,759, a percent increase, 6.7%. Dollar increase, 11,723.
I think it's good. I think over the next couple of years, we need to really talk about getting somebody else in that department. But I think for this year, that's good.
Okay. Human resources, total department request of $441,062, increase 2.1%. Total dollar amount of the increase is $8,942. Good. All right. Risk management, total request, $658,500, decrease of 14.10%, decrease of $107,654.
Always easier when there's a decrease involved.
Employee benefits, department request, 18,800, increase 8.7%, increase amount, 1,500. IT. Request $2,313,123, 5.5%. Increase amount $120,118.02. Okay. Juvenile probation, total request $532,324. Increase of 7.6%, increase of $37,668.
They stated, if I remember correctly, and you probably don't know this, but that was with regards to insurance increases on juvenile probation. I can look it back up, but it seemed to me that was what their increase was.
I don't recall. I would have to look.
Not that important. I'm okay with it.
Land use, total request is $762,041, increase of 27.3%, increased dollar amount of $163,627.
Just a reminder, we authorized an additional person in there, and that's counts for the increase.
All right, next page. Economic development, total request, $294,490, increase of 1%, and the total increase is $83,343. That does not seem right.
That was
That dollar amount's wrong. There's something wrong there, but the request is right, $294,490. I think I went in and modified that and it didn't calculate that correctly.
yeah, because Green River's picking up.
Yeah,
part
was-
of the carryover.
it is, and it was. I went in and overrode it with that recent change that I sent to you, and it didn't get fixed right there for the amount of the the percent didn't get calculated correctly.
So it was supposed to be 85,000. And the two cities will end up paying 70 of that 85.
So it increased because of a carryover. So the cities each paid 70,000, and then the county was also supposed to pay 70,000. So there was a $210,000 budget. Well, what happened is they didn't spend the full $210,000 last year. There's a big carryover. So because it is the city's money, this budget got increased. You're right. I think it was around 80. Well, it was over 80,000, and that's why it's over the 210 of the three parties paying the 70,000, because that's a carryover from last year. So that's why it got increased, that big amount. Are we okay with that one? Okay, purchasing, total request $471,236, increase of 3.5%, increase amount of $15,916. Okay. Road and Bridge. Total request, $10,025,837.72. This is an increase of 111.3%. Total dollar increase, $5,280,341.65.
Happy birthday, Gene.
So that too, obviously, is mainly capital.
Right, that's going to be your remodel of the
Night
night
oil.
oil toll building, which is roughly 5 million.
Oh.
All right, Veteran Services, total request 333,497, increase of 16.6%. Dollar amount of the increase is $47,370. Assessor, department request, $1,154,135, increase of 14.4%. Total dollar increase, $145,108.
Mr. Chairman, I had asked Assessor Davis to include this in the budget for this year after he approached the commission last month. My feeling was that it wouldn't be appropriate at that point in time because we had no idea what our financial position was. And it would have been irresponsible of us at that point in time to have hired that position. But knowing that we were developing the budget, I felt it would be appropriate for us to look at that during the budget process. I believe he has included that in this. I would defer to his judgment. And as an elected official, he made an argument to us that he needed another position. I would argue that if as our elected assessor, he believes he needs that position, that we should include that.
I have a little bit of a different take. I think, as we mentioned with adding a position in land use, sometimes the county can cut too deep and there is some of that backfill that needs to take place, but eventually that continues to climb up. And I think it's been good and some of the savings they've had over the years through attrition. Sometimes it can be cut too deep. But I also don't want to just reverse that role and get back into backfilling all these positions without large justification. I think the assessor has some reasons for wanting additional help, but I'm not sure that the timing of it right now is merited. We've already had $1 million in the payroll of increase through new positions and so I don't know. I went along with putting it in, I guess, for the budgeting purposes, but at this time, I don't support adding that and then increasing the expense to that department.
With the chairman on that one.
I think I'm with you, Mr. Chairman.
So we're going to take that position out then.
I believe that's the
That's
consensus.
where we want to move. Okay. All right, attorney. Total request, $3,314,912.19, increase of 6.6%, increase amount of $162,254.19. County clerk. Total department request, $1,331,246.86, increase 14.7%, increased dollar amount, $170,628.93. Financial management, total request, $200,954, increase of 3.7%. Dollar amount of the increase is $7,168. Commissioner support, total request $118,530. Increase 12.5%, dollar amount of the increase $13,176. Elections, total request $391,352, decrease of 32.4%, decrease of $187,219.31. Clerk of District Court, request $831,296, decrease of 0.7%, decrease of $5,701.56. Coroner request $357,979, increase of 14.6%, increase of $45,709. Sheriff request of $6,668,371.13, increase of 5.9%, increase of $370,839.90. Detention Center request $6,237,084, increase of 4.5%, increase of $266,400. Emergency Management, Homeland Security, request $33,080, decrease of 6.3%, a decrease of $2,208. Animal Control, total request $102,451, increase of 3.4%, total increase $3,321. Treasurer request $1,147,285, increase of 4%. Increase dollar amount $44,199. Okay. On to,
Should we go through capital now?
you want to? We can,
Make it easier.
absolutely.
Could I get the big print?
Yeah. That would probably make my eyes. Thank you.
There's 2 pages.
Thank you.
Not as small as some, but that will help.
Yeah. I have no idea.
Papers, right?
So on the capital committee, first off, I think this is an excellent list and it really helps put things in perspective for us as a board as we try and evaluate how much to budget for year over year. I really appreciate the collaboration among the different departments and trying to help out the county as a whole, not just think about, one individual department. So that in itself has been kind of a breath of fresh air, at least from my perspective. I would like to get into, this is ultimately where we're going to make up the biggest, change in the budgets. Operating is pretty much, flat with the exception of some new positions or cost of living or things like that. So it'd be nice in the future if we can kind of plan for capital. This list obviously totals just over 10 million, about 10.139 million. I did have some conversations with Gene and just how much can actually be accomplished in 1 year. Obviously, we've got a big one in there, almost $5 million with the Night Oil Tools building. Some of us have had individual discussions on this as well. The thought is that about 90 or 95% of ranks 1 and 2 could be accomplished. And then I know at our last budget workshop, I believe Commissioner Richards threw out the idea of trying to get some of these component units caught up with some of their maintenance needs. So just running the quick numbers on that, if you added 1, 2 and the component units together, that would be $9,131,575.47. which would mean out of that $10 million total, that would be a reduction of $1,008,170 out of the capital. I guess that would be kind of the direction I would lean to. I still question whether all of that can be accomplished. I know there's some issues there with, the replacement of equipment and lead times and, the construction season being in the middle of the fiscal years and all of that. But we do have money available this year, and I would like to try and get caught up on some of that. And some of us have also had some individual discussion on just the complexities of, our carryover is projected to be 26 million this year, but a lot of that's inflated because of the change with Senate File 60. And so it looks like, we're swimming in a pile of cash, but the reality of it is, our expenditures are up 68 million, revenues are 53 million. So we have a $15 million shortfall, $26 million carryover, but 7.6 of that is through this component unit, true up, so to speak. And so I think some money's there, but collectively as a group, we've all kind of determined that we want to be able to get projects done in the future. And while we haven't had the opportunity to discuss exactly what that is, I don't want the perception to be that we're just banking money into reserves and continuing to build that without a plan in the future. I think we've been wise in the discussions we've had in trying to take care of the employees by giving some cost of living back, building the reserves a little bit with not knowing how this, Senate File 60 is going to shake out, and also trying to put some money aside for some improvements and some projects. I think all of us are pretty similar on creating some type of a capital fund, whatever we might call that, where, we can put money towards that in some form of a reserve so that we can continue to attack capital projects in the future, plan, maybe it's 5 million this year and 6 million the following year, to help simplify the budgeting process, but also to show that we're not just sitting on cash and, we're planning to get some new improvements done, whether it's a shooting sports complex or a multi-use facility or, any of those, ideas and emails that we're getting pounded on a weekly basis from the public. I think it's transparent of us to show that. And I'd be curious if any of you have any other feedback in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, I totally agree. I think we have an opportunity to get some of these capital projects knocked out with the understanding that we just can't physically do as many as we'd like to. We could probably afford to just approve this entire list, but I think it's a lot more prudent of us to say pick ranks 1 and 2, fund those. I think our component agencies through the capital committee came up with good projects that they need. They're seeing some capital needs that have been neglected over the years. I did want to say with the library, they had dropped off carpeting White Mountain Library, and I think that was about $150,000 project, but they did that in anticipation of paying for that out of their own reserves. And since we're cutting them to 120, that was kind of taking that away from was kind of an unanticipated request. I did get an email from Lindsay before she went on vacation. Let me see if I can find it. What she said is, here's the budget information we discussed today. Library had planned to use 250,000 of our cash carryover to fund part of our budget above the request we made to the county for fiscal year 24. 125,000 of that would be used for capital improvements, specifically to replace the carpet at White Mountain Library, and 125,000 would go toward the library's operations. We're hoping that the library can retain those funds above 120 days cash on hand in order to complete the necessary projects. I talked to Bonnie about this, and you felt that they're okay on the operating with their current budget. Is that your discussions with them?
Well, what I did is I took their numbers, and I'm not sure, I guess, when did they budget for those capital items for next
They
year?
believe they did, but they
Okay.
didn't believe that their application form covered it
Okay,
clearly, so they didn't think they needed to tell us what they were going to spend out of their reserves. I encouraged him in the future. That's a conversation we always have to have. I think if we defer that carpet another year, I think that's doable. Gene, how did those discussions go in the capital committee? Is that something you think could be deferred another year?
The bottom line is how much they want to do, automate, shelving around and stuff like that. Dump looks like that. It's more in the more halfway, but then we put you up frame. So, yeah, it can be, but I think they have to market to it. The hard part about capital is the longer you defer it, the more it comes to it. And right now, you've seen by the last two years, it's not even.
Assuming I think the rest of their budget looks good for operating, and the 120 gives them the ability to absorb some of their operating expenses. Well, I hate to ask to put more back into capital after we cut a bunch. I'd like to put that 125,000 for carpet back in their capital request.
So they had 250 days cash on hand, and you've accounted for that by the 120 days that we were discussing. Is that right, Bonnie?
yeah, so if they included that amount, which I don't know if they did or not, I haven't confirmed this. But if they included that amount in their expenditure budget for next year, it was calculated into that. So I would have to
So they pulled the
confirm with them.
capital budget, and I think their inexperience in doing these, especially with our capital budget might have kind of just left a gap that we all missed. So that's why I asked you. I got different stories from their director and then their budget officer from
Okay,
how that looked. But I don't really, I think they're covered on operating, but I would like to make sure we cover that capital. Because that carpet's the original carpet from when that library was built, and it's in pretty bad shape.
Like 54% increase in budget.
Yeah, their budget this year is 3,048,000.
I think it was about a 14% before.
Now it's 3.4. I don't know if they accounted for that or not. They do list 100,000 for capital, but if I'm understanding you, that's separate
They
from
do,
what
but
they were
they
gonna
had,
pay themselves.
yeah, they had because they had carpet and floors in the in the Green River Library on there that they'd left on their priority list. But I think they misunderstood their capital requests, and I don't think they applied it on their budget request form totally. If we don't do it, we can come back to it next year. But I do know it needs to be done. You only get so many years out of a piece of carpet.
Okay, so that reduction by bringing them from 250 days cash on hand to 120 was a 238,000 reduction. So you're proposing putting back 125 of that?
And that 250 days was a little skewed because a good chunk of their membership dues come due before the end of their budget year. So some of that money has been expended between then and now. I think they're closer to about 150, 180 right now.
Any other thoughts, input on that proposal,
I'm
Commissioners?
totally confused now because the library request is for 4.7 million, is 54% increase. It's 1.65 million more than last year.
Well, these numbers are very
Those are skewed
distorted.
because of SF 60 and recapturing some of those.
Well, they're skewed because we were changing the component unit mill levies to 0. So what that's gonna do is we're gonna have to recapture
Okay.
the mineral taxes that were distributed to them because they're gonna be based on a 0 levy. So that's why they're increased. Yes, they are very skewed.
I can go along with the 125.
Doesn't give me great heartburn. I can go with it.
Okay, so we'll add that back in for the library.
Okay, and then the 125, it's for carpet. I just want to put this because we're gonna add it to this capital list. It's for carpet
For White Mountain Library.
for the. Okay, we'll get that added to the capital list and get it added to their request as well. Any more, so are we gonna move forward with budgeting the priorities 1 and 2 and component units and 125,000 for carpet for White Mountain Library? Is that where we're,
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and my proposal was to take that 1,008,000 and put it towards some form of a, capital improvements reserve, or I don't know what the title of it should be, but rather than just putting it back into the general reserve, to create a capital reserve so that we can start chipping away at that and planning, years in advance to
Okay.
show that there's an intended use of not just sitting on it. And that's the feedback I was looking for from any of you, to see if you had any thoughts in that regard.
I think we should round that up to an even million, even 2 million.
And there might be additional,
Yeah.
cuts that we have that we can put towards that. What is that?
so a 2 million, you want to add another reserve account and have it be 2 million and have it be for capital, future capital? Okay, yes, we can do that. All right. So approving in this budget, priorities 1 and 2, all of the component units plus 125,000, and then we're going to include 2 million into a capital reserve account. All right. And that covers capital.
Sure.
A couple things, and Bonnie and I've talked about this a couple different times, different ways. When we set up the capital a couple of years ago in our hopes of getting everybody under the same plan, and I want to make sure you guys are all on the same page as us, is we approve not only the projects, but also a dollar amount down here. And then what that allows us is, say 3 projects underground. Then what we can do is say, okay, 3 projects underground, we have another $90,000. We can skip into rank number 3 and pick off one of those projects. It's the $90,000. Are you guys okay with that? We would come back and, ask you guys that, but that's in our hope. That's why we ranked them like that, because if we don't, then we're just going to have carryover for the year. And we've already prioritized these. I'm thinking if we can get it done and we have extra money because something underran, will you allow us to do that or not?
I mean, I personally am, as long as there's that, transparency there, so we're aware of what's going on, because I don't want to just continue to budget for capital projects that don't get completed
Right.
either. So I mean,
No,
I'd rather,
right.
if there's a project that can be done quicker than this one, rather than carrying it over every year, let's spend it. So
Okay.
that's my
Mr.
sense.
Chairman, though, what if it comes in 20% over on all these? Then do we gonna let them go into the reserve thing?
Then we have to discuss that, because we have to pull stuff from and that's why we, if you look at all priority 1 and priority 2, we've ranked those
Yeah.
into what we see. So that's why that happens, is we can do that. The other thing that I would request is, with Christina's project management that we're doing and the how we can account for every single one of them, is there any way we can set that up for the component units also? How the hospital does it for their maintenance is awesome. And not to say that anybody's doing anything wrong, but if they underrun projects or overrun projects, if they overrun projects, it's got to come out there. But if they underrun projects, I don't want them to necessarily, go out for another project. I want them to have to come back and go through the same process that we do. So I know it's not statutorily required, but I think it's good practice.
Completely agree. And I had a pretty good conversation with Christina on just seeing how she's looking at the capital side, and it's pretty cool.
It's really set up well.
Yeah, and so I think that would help for an accountability standpoint on some of these components, and also help them with tracking, because a lot of them don't, it's not their experience or their expertise. I mean, I know they have a lot of talented people in those organizations. That's not what I mean, but just being able to track exactly where taxpayer dollars are going, which is, our objective up here. So I don't know how much additional work that would create for Christina, but if it's not too difficult, I think that makes good sense, because some of them, the hospital statutorily, but the other ones there's some vagueness there, and I think that would help clean some of that up. So
I think it'd just be good practice. So thank you.
Component units. Are we ready to move on to component units? All right. The events complex, their request is $3,856,627. We also have budgeted in for the events complex, $330,000. That's 30% of the historic horse racing revenue that we receive. So their actual increase from their request is 70.1%, an increase of $1,589,292. But again, that's distorted because of the change to the mill levy. So this amount would actually be coming out of the general fund. Did we decide to move forward with option one? Is that what we decided for the, is that what we decided? Option one? Okay. All right. So yeah, so the total budget would be those added together, and then we would have some carryover for that based on what comes in from taxes that go into that fund. So are we okay with that amount?
And just for clarification on that, Bonnie, so to do this true up, I mean, it's showing that they have an additional almost $6 million, but that's not really the case. We're just
Right.
allocating that so that we can take it back,
Mhm.
right? So the budget is essentially their original amount, but in order to true this, we have to show that.
Yes, because because technically they owe us that money back. So they would have requested a lot more had they known they had to write us a check for $1 million. So we need to appropriate that money, and that's going to come out of the general fund, because now that revenue that went to them that we thought was their tax revenue is now no longer their tax revenue, it's the county's tax revenue. And so that needs to go out to them as an expense through the general fund. So that's why it increases.
Mr. Chairman, this is probably a moot point, but it would have been a benefit to us to have had their original request, and then what the impact of the change to the 12 mil was, looking at that, so we could look and see what the request for this year, what their actual request was versus what their actuals were previously.
Okay.
So, and I don't think this is going to happen again, so I don't think it's an issue, but
Great.
it would have been a benefit to have had that, I think.
Okay, so I emailed you out a spreadsheet of that calculation a couple weeks ago.
Have it here.
And yeah, and you even have my summary, and I emailed out that summary today too.
Yeah.
So,
It just in the packet, in the budget.
oh, in the
itself,
packet.
it would
Oh,
help to
okay.
have that as we're looking at it and making
Oh.
this decision.
Okay,
Yeah, so I had the information, just didn't have it here. I had to input it myself. And
okay.
as I say, I don't think it's gonna happen again, but if it should, it would just be a benefit.
Okay,
That is going to be confusing next year, because, these are going to show that they're heavily inflated. And so it's going to be important for this board to remember the change and be able to go back and relate it to, fiscal year 23 numbers rather than this huge fiscal year 24, even though ultimately they're not receiving that. It's just a way of
I
inflating the
think,
books.
I think we should assign remembering that to Commissioner Slaughter.
I agree.
I think you should go back to another federal meeting, Commissioner Richards.
Just to be clear on that, the capital that we just approved is also included in these.
yes,
Okay.
it is. So library, $4,700,289 plus the $125,000 that we are adding to their capital. I'm not even going to read the percent increase of dollar amount because they're not real numbers. So why don't we just stick with the $4,700,289 plus the $125,000 for capital. Museum, $367,346. Southwest Counseling, $1,247,738.
So on this one, we do have the capital committee. There was a $260,000 request put in there for capital. And I think in the future, it'd be better to get together with the committee themselves to work through some of this. Treat it as project accounting like we just discussed. My recommendation would be to reduce this amount by 260,000 to not include capital with this request.
I agree.
I concur.
Okay. So I'm reducing that budget by $260,000. 260,000, 260,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Memorial Hospital Maintenance, $1,974,638. And then also I am carrying over the SLIB match amount the commission approved last year to provide them a $3 million match. And this is the amount that I was provided by Tammy. I will actually have to go and look and see what they've spent out of that. Because that might go up a little bit or down a little bit, depending on how much they have collected out of that.
We are actually doing that through a voucher. So that wouldn't be part of a 12-month distribution, right?
A little, correct. It'll still go into their budget, but correct. Yes, that would not be included in that.
Yeah, and that just went out last week. I think they sent a voucher for. That looks pretty close to that.
Well, they sent a voucher for $425,000, but it was an estimate, I think, wasn't it? Did they send an actual in afterwards?
They did, yeah. So then we asked for, actual expenditures rather than just estimates. So, yeah.
Okay, and that one's not in there. I'll have to update that amount for that. So I'll just include in there whatever hasn't been spent of that $3 million. Board of Health, $489,872. And that is all of the component units. On to outside agencies. Boys and Girls Club, 60,000, 66.7% increase, $24,000
Can I jump in
increase.
here really quick? Just as a matter of my belief across the board on these outside agencies. Other than our in-kind contribution to the food bank where we just pay for their health insurance, and that's gone up because of our cost of health insurance. I'm of the mind, I want to hold the line on all of these. I maybe individual ones, somebody can argue to increase, but I don't want to see any increases in public money going to the outside agencies. Some of the ones I think are the most important ones that we fund held the line on their requests. And I felt, we heard the argument several times that we need more money because our ARPA money's running out. Our ARPA money's running out too, so we can't fix that for everybody. I want to encourage these outside entities to quit thinking of the county as their funding source and to get out there and start looking for outside revenues beyond the county. So I'd like to hold the line on as many of these as we can and not take on any new ones.
I have a similar take on that. I think across the board, I don't know that that's doable. I think some may need some individual attention. I know treatment court was wanting to do a one-time implementation of their DUI program, so that inflated, 100% increase. And I know the airports had some struggles and things of that, but I do kind of have a similar sense of there needs to be some effort on those parts of finding additional services. And we're seeing a lot of that with blaming it on COVID, like you mentioned, that that's out. And so now the county's job is to make them whole. And I just don't know that I fully agree with that. So.
Well, many of the things that these organizations do are great for our county, but it is not always the taxpayers' responsibility to fund charitable organizations. And I'm with you. We still need to go through them one at a time, but I just wanted you guys to know that that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'd like to hold the line on as many of these as possible.
I agree with that, Mr. Chairman. And I have a question on Castle Rock, because they said they got that $250,000 regional grant from the state and that it would reduce our bill to them. But they haven't reflected any 250,000. I know we have an MOU with them for 1.8 million, but where's the 250,000 coming in?
Because of our contract, our
Yeah.
contract requires us to actually budget it,
Yeah.
whether or not we expend it, we do have to budget.
Well, and I just want to reaffirm, we better see monthly reports from them.
I agree.
We've asked for them. Have you gotten anything from Castle Rock?
They have not sent me any monthly reports.
Commissioner Slaughter and I met with them as we reported on at our last meeting, and they're supposed to be sending them each month, so we'll see what happens at the end of this month, but we did have good discussion in that regard of wanting to ensure, just like what we're just talking with, component units or any funding really, that is taxpayers' money. We want to ensure whether it's in contract form or not, that it's going to where it's intended to be. It looks like there's a good chance they are going to come in under that 1.8 based off the adjusted budget year to date. So maybe that's part of that 250 that you're alluding to, but that's pretty set in stone from a budget standpoint moving forward. Rob, you have any input on Commissioner Richards' proposal?
No, Mr. Chairman, I understand the concept and I tend to agree. I think, obviously all of these entities have seen their costs go up as we all have. But I do believe that, they need to look for other sources of revenue other than just the county. It's not, I don't see anywhere there's a huge impact, with the exception possibly of the Boys and Girls Club, because there is a 66% request increase there. So no, I would tend to agree. I think we should talk about each one individually. And if someone can justify making the increase, then that's fine. But I think it's a good concept.
We'll start with Boys and Girls Club.
All right, Boys and Girls Club, request 60,000, increase 66.7%, increased dollar amount 24,000.
No.
Chairman, I recommend we hold the line at 36,000.
I'm in agreement.
All right, 36,000 for Boys and Girls Club. Castle Rock Hospital District, 1.8 million.
That was a given.
Okay. Climb Wyoming, 3,000. No increase.
I'm good
Family-
with that.
Family Resources, 50,000. It's a 10.7% increase, a $4,850 increase.
Chairman, I recommend we hold the line at 45,150.
I'm in agreement.
I agree.
Food Bank, $26,485, increase of 13.5%, increase of $3,145.
And that is the one we provide in-kind services where we're just providing health insurance, and that's the additional cost of that health insurance.
So it should be 26,485.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leave that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
VIRS increase the request is 110,000, increase 5.3%, increase of $5,500.
They do good work, but also like the Young at Heart, they also are doing some of those same services. So I've asked them to coordinate, but I don't think they really do.
Again, I'd recommend we hold the line at 104,500.
Fine with that.
All right, 104,500 for VIRS. Youth Home request is $139,203. This is no increase.
I'm fine with that as well. I do think we need to have some discussions with some of their facilities as well, which are actually our facilities. And some of this funding that's going to them, and I know they've had some changes on some of their staff and things of that nature, but I think in the future it'd be wise of us to discuss, maybe this can be set up similar to the hospital or some form of maintenance to ensure that those facilities are being upkept. I know I've had some discussions with Gary in regards to their Green River facility, but that's a discussion for another day. But for now, I think I'm fine with that.
YWCA, $238,452, no increase.
I'm good with that.
Golden Hour Senior Center, $221,480, 4.6% increase, $9,680 increase.
I defer to Commissioner Slaughter on this one, but they have a massive amount of reserves, and it doesn't make sense for us to increase our distribution to them when they have plenty of money of their own that they could be spending on their expenses.
Thank you for the deferral, Commissioner. No, I agree. I had talked with them and let them know with their cash on hand that they had, there was probably a likelihood we would be looking at that. I think it would be appropriate with what we are doing with everyone else to hold them at the $211,800.
Yeah, they had 375 days cash on hand, so it's hard to look at that and wonder why they continue to come back to the county for money. But I'll leave that discussion up to our trustee liaison and Commissioner Slaughter moving forward to, well, I think you've already been having those conversations.
Yeah, we've been having those, and I think we will see benefits of those over the next little while. So
All right, so 211,800 for Golden Hour. Young at Heart, 222,000. This is no increase.
And Mr. Chairman, on this one, I am good with holding the line this year because they're in a mess and they probably are gonna need our help getting through. But it gives me heartburn that some of this is going to their childcare facility, which is one of the most expensive childcare facilities in the county. If the county's subsidizing childcare, I think it should be going to populations that are more in need of it.
Mr. Chairman,
Hang on, go ahead, Commissioner Richards.
That's pretty much all I have.
well, I'm the liaison. They're showing a profit of 8,000 a month off the Child Learning Center now. And I threatened them that they should take 2 million less because they lost it, but they didn't quite go with that. I told them next year we wanted to see them being more self-sufficient, but they said the state cut their food budget by 20,000 and they're losing 37,000 a month on their food costs right now. So they asked if they could hold the line for another year, but I said, you better show a reduction next year. But they're employing 7 staff members versus Green River is what? 5. So they're feeding about double the number of people, about the same amount of budget request. Yeah, no, I go to every meeting and talk to them about that.
I'm good with keeping them at the 222 right now.
Mhm. Okay.
Conservation District, $221,160, no increase.
I'm good with that. This year.
I'm glad I didn't have to throw the gavel at you. I heard something about it in that Zoom meeting about throwing the gavel at you.
This UW extension, $99,610.99. This is a decrease of 5.3%, decrease of $5,607.09.
Good with that.
Yeah,
Eden Valley Improvement District, 35,000, no increase.
Good with that.
this is an odd one. I still can't wrap my head around, the amount of money they have in reserves that they're saying is tied up because they have it in CDs. I mean, it's 35,000. It's good support for, Eden Valley. And so I can go along with that, but it's just amazing. I mean, their days cash on hand, I think was over 1,200 some days.
Their reserves, I think they can't use that mill levy for improvements, so like a new roof or something. Can they? I'm not sure.
And that's my understanding. A lot of that money that they have in reserves
Just to try to.
was taxed for a specific purpose and they can only use it for that purpose. So this is helping them with the additional things that they do up there.
Okay. It's flat anyway, so.
Okay, Red Desert Roundup Rodeo, 8,400, no increase.
On the Red Desert Rodeo, I'm going to support giving them the distribution this year. But one of the comments that they said was they keep trying to keep their ticket prices down. They're not keeping their ticket prices down. They're just deferring the price of those tickets to, well, us and the city of Rock Springs. And I would encourage the Red Desert Roundup Rodeo to reassess their pricing and come back next year with a reduced request or a zero request, because I don't think it's our job to pick one event of the hundreds that happen in Sweetwater County and say, this is the one we're gonna fund. Historically, we funded it, but I think we need to set some new examples and stop funding events like these.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Overland Stage Stampede Rodeo did not ask for any. They've never asked for any. So just comparatively.
Okay, so keep it, hold the line this year then.
Star, $112,603, no increase. Treatment Court, 16,000, 100% increase, $8,000 increase.
Mr. Chairman, this is one of the rare ones. I'll support the increase.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of this. I think it's a good intention program. The comment was made that it will just be a 1-year deal and they'll refer back to, previous budgets. So I think it's a good investment for something that's very needed in the community. So I do support them.
Yes.
We'll just jump on the bandwagon again.
Okay, Carbon County Fire District is $12,000. This is in an MOU that we have with Carbon County. So that goes
Fire
along.
protection for bear oil and IED.
Guardian ad litem, there's 130,000. This is a decrease of 10.3%, a decrease of $15,000. This is the budget that the judge and Donnelly have come in to discuss with you, increasing those rates from $100 to $150. This amount does not reflect that increase. It was discussed and decided by the board that they would decide that at budget time. So what would you like to decide?
I consider this less an outside agency and a service that we're kind of responsible for providing. I think we should probably adjust the budget up on it to reflect what they're asking for.
I still didn't get a good understanding in the presentations of how it compares throughout the state. It was just kind of we think, I don't know that 150 is an appropriate move. I would support maybe a 125.
I agree. The 125 was the number I was thinking if we were to increase it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so would you like me to increase their budget by 25% then? And then that is probably a decision that's gonna have to be made in an actual meeting and approved in an actual meeting. This is just for budget. So I can increase that 130,000 by 25%. So we're going up from 100 to $125 an hour. Is that what we want to do?
Yeah.
Increase it by 25%. All right. Public defender, $186,375. This is the amount of the bill that we will receive from the state for this. So there's no increase. I did do a budget amendment this year. It stays the same for 2 years and then they adjust it after 2 years based on several factors, crime rate, assessed value, population, those kinds of factors, but it does remain the same for 2 years. So it will be the exact same as last year. So no change there. The Combined Communications Joint Powers Board, $910,276.86. This is a decrease from last year's budget. but we had over budgeted last year because they were considering changing the percentages for the county and the cities. That did not happen. So it's not actually a decrease of their budget. It's a decrease of their budget from last year, but it's not a decrease of their actuals from last year. So $910,276.86 is their request.
Good.
Airport, 440,000.
I'm on the airport liaison, and it's due to, a lot of that's due to legal right now.
One of the rare cases I'm okay with the increase.
SkyWest Airlines, we do have a contract with them. This is the maximum amount we will have to pay under that contract. $715,140.
Good with that one.
Title 25 Memorial Hospital, $471,488. This is the same amount that is budgeted for the current year. However, they did receive a budget amendment this year. And then we also have 15,000 budgeted for non-hospital Title 25 expenditures.
This is a tough one because we clearly don't want to spend that much money, but it's kind of out of our hands
Right.
when it does. So I just soon, I guess, put it in the budget and plan for it and hope it doesn't all get expended.
And then St. Christopher's Highway Travel Assistance, $10,000.
This one, again, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what Joyce does and I appreciate her passion. But I don't think it's our job to take that on. So I would recommend 0.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I appreciate the presentations and what they're doing for the community, but it does seem kind of counterproductive to hold the line on a lot of these organizations and bring on additional expense. So I too would hold off from any funding for them.
0. All right. Last page is other funds. So with the exception of grants, all of these are other funds and they don't play a part in the summary figures I give you, with the exception of that first one, the grants. So however, they are amounts that do go in the budget resolution. So I did want to go over them. So grants is $3,964,029.18. This does include the ARPA that is planning on being expended this year, but it does not include the payroll that is planning on being included in that ARPA, which was roughly 4.6 million.
How will that be addressed? Will that come through the form of an amendment when that takes
No.
place, or?
No, so what's going to happen is it'll actually just come out of the general fund because it's payroll. So it'll stay with the department that it's going to go in, and we're just assigning those expenses to that. So the auditors can have expenditures to test for compliance. So that's why it doesn't get included in the grants. It gets included in the payroll budget for the department that those funds are being used for. However, the capital is included in here. The capital that we are spending the ARPA on, it is included in that number. The county road fund, $6,862,000. Impact tax fund, $484,878.41. Inmate enterprise fund, $90,000. Drug seizure, $14,681. Parks and Rec, $78,124.
What is that?
The Parks and Rec, that is, so we set up a separate fund for that when the rec board was dissolved. The rec board had a lot of cash in their bank. And since there was a mill levy that went specifically for Parks and Rec, that money came over when the rec board was dissolved. It came over and became a department of the county. Well, that money, we didn't want it just going into the general fund because it was specifically levied for Parks and Rec. So there's a separate fund for the Parks and Rec. And once that money's gone, that fund will go away. But for now, it is sitting in that fund so that we can just use it for Parks and Rec expenditures.
Thank you.
State and County Roads Fund, $5,195,000. CDC Building Fund, $60,000. And the Health Insurance Fund, $10,943,175.
Is that CDC from the 6 cent?
Yes, that is remaining money from the 6 cent. We do have an MOU and several amended MOUs with them. And in the current MOU, we distribute 60,000 of principal to them from that fund annually. And then we also distribute interest to them as well, the interest that is earned on that money. All right, well, that gets us through all of those. If you want to flip back to, we're not, it's not even 5 o'clock yet.
Hard to believe.
So I switch back to page 2. This is just the most recent numbers I've had. You've seen this over and over again. So we are currently at a shortfall of $15,335,984. However, this does not include the cash carryover we have of roughly $26 million. So are there any other questions for me or any other discussions you want to have?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we're gonna have quite a bit of reserves and we put 2 million aside for future capital. I would also like to put 5 million aside. We have some projects that we would like to accomplish over the next few years outside of our regular capital, like a shooting sports complex, if that's something we pursue, an indoor arena, if that's something we should pursue. So I'd like to create a separate account called if somebody does a better name, but a strategic development fund, and put $5 million in it for future strategic development of our county resources.
And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. I mean, I don't want to make a bunch of reserve accounts, but even this 2 million we're talking for capital, put it in that, so at least it shows that we do have a designation for it and we're planning, different, whether it's shooting sports or, multi-use or whatever the case is, rather than just banking it in county reserves. So I don't want to create a bunch of different reserve accounts, but I do think that it's more transparent to show that, there's a use for it. So
And why we're holding money, that there is a plan to make Sweetwater County better with that money and we're not just socking it away.
And I don't know where we're going to end up today between some of the cuts and additions. But I would think if there is additional money left over, put that in that account. I don't think we need 2. Do you just create one? And
Well, I think capital projects is one thing, but we're gonna try to pursue projects that are more geared towards economic development outside our typical capital expenditures, which are really depreciation accounts with another name. I'm talking about putting money aside for planned growth.
right.
Do we have to take that in a meeting action item? No?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we're going to approve it on Thursday, so we're just giving
Yes.
direction on where to put some of this carryover.
If we never spend it, we recapture it, we put it back, but I want people to know that we're not just hoarding money. We actually have purpose
Right.
for some of that money.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Commissioner Richards again, and once again, I'm going to bring up, I understand the concept of not wanting to have several different reserve accounts, but I believe that we should set up an employee benefit reserve. When we were talking about the cost of living adjustments, I had said I felt 4% was the number. We did 3%. The concept being, we would like to continue doing cost of living adjustments over the next few years. Obviously, we have no idea what our mineral values are going to do over that period of time. But from what I saw in my 35 years in the county treasurer's office, had commissions set aside funding and had conviction to support the employees, I think our employees would be in a better position than what they are right now. And so I'd like to see that money set aside as an employee benefit reserve. There's no need that we would have to use it. But if by chance we had a down year and we still felt like our employees were our most valuable asset, which I believe they are, we would have that money available to use at that point in time. And I would once again say, I would like to see us over the course of my 4-year term, I would like to see us really consider the cost of living adjustments for the employees as the top priority as we're beginning our budget process.
I'm not in disagreement with taking care of the employees, and I agree with your position on that. And I think that was the discussion we had, which was the consensus of, not giving a huge cost of living on year one, and then, they go 3 or 4 years without any adjustment. So kind of a slow, gradual climb, I think makes more sense. My only fear is creating a reserve for that too is going to burn up. And so I guess it's sixes, whether you have.
But you can always
additional money and-
reappropriate if you choose to.
Yeah, and reserves.
I know we're talking a concern about creating too many funds, but here's 2021. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different funds that were all basically dissolved because of budget problems. And I think if we do 2 or 3 this year with some hopes of saving some money for future use, we're not getting into too bad a territory.
The input, Mary, Lauren?
I also wonder if there's a way to, instead of having it in a totally different account, which I guess it doesn't even need to be in a totally different account, but decide on exactly how much we want to set aside, put that in a resolution and just have that, this is our intent. We know the money's in there. And then when Bonnie presents it to us, we know that amount is reserved. And so it's not presented in the reserve. I don't know. I don't know if it matters investment wise where it is. So I think that I do think it's important though. I mean, the number of people that have reached out since the new commission has been here about things like arenas and sports complexes and things like that. Everybody is very interested in talking about that again. And so I think that the opportunity to have something set aside is good. It's good for economic development. It's also good if we potentially were able to get grant funding to build something and we had to have a match or something like that would fit under those guidelines. So I'm not opposed to that at all. I would like more information and to do a deeper dive into the potential employee benefit fund and understand, regulations and rules and guidance and things around that before we were to move forward with anything like that. But I'm not opposed to the idea. Just, I don't think that I have enough information right now.
Mary?
I don't really have a strong opinion on that moment. I kind of agree with Lauren. I'd like to know a little bit more before we set aside another reserve.
Okay, so if I understand the consensus, we'll have the capital improvement reserve. What did you call your reserve, Island?
Strategic development.
Strategic development. We were gonna put 2 million into the capital, 5 million into the strategic, and if there's any left over based off the changes we made today, we'll put that as well back into capital or strategic,
General county reserve, is that?
the general reserve. Is everyone good with that? Did we accomplish everything?
I don't have any more questions. Does anyone have any questions of me?
I don't think so. It's felt like a long month and a half, but we made it. You were doubting us. Made it.
Kind of close, I'd say, but.
Dave, did you have something?
Page 6 for the assessor's budget. Which I already got away from.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrap this up.
Okay, real quick, I know you were concerned about backfilling position, but the assessor's office is down 2 full-time positions since I took over or since I became in the office. And the workload isn't getting any less and there's more properties, more revals. There's a lot more work to be done. That may or may not talk you out of your position, but the dollar amount here that the HR department had put in had taken out the part-time seasonal position and put in the full-time position. So if we're going to not fund the full-time position, I would ask that the HR department be able to put the part-time seasonal back in, and then if we're able to fill that, at least we get that bit of help for this summer.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
agree.
was under the impression that they were both in there pending the decision that we made.
No, they were not. We took the part-time one out and then put in the full-time. So
Okay.
no, this is just the full-time position is the difference here that you see.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I've got a appointment. I've got to run though. I'm fine with the part-time.
That's general consensus. Did you get that, Bonnie? Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Dave. Okay, all. Well, I appreciate the time and dedication. This has been a very difficult budget session with all the changes and implementations. I think we worked through it well together and I appreciate everyone's cooperation in that regard. Don't forget, we do have to officially approve Thursday at 9 a.m. And we'll get the resolution prepared in the meantime. But thanks, Bonnie, for your work. Thanks, Treasurer Cowan as well. And we'll look forward to officially adopting this for fiscal year 24.
Thank you. I did send you a preliminary budget resolution just right before this. I will update that for the changes that have been made. I was hoping there wouldn't be a lot of them, so it wouldn't be too much trouble to update it all. But I will send you an updated draft of the budget resolution for you to review prior to Thursday morning, so you'll know what you're approving.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks all. Appreciate everyone's